noon. Councilmember Kitchen moves to postpone item number 33 to June 9th. Is there a second for that? Councilmember Harper Madison seconds that. I think it will also, as we discussed yesterday, we're posting the item for action to June 9th, but we're going to put it on the agenda, work session in council, potentially for the 17th and 19th for discussion only, no action, so that we can, at the work session, talk with each other, and so that we have the option of inviting the public to speak as well on the 19th, if that makes sense. Discussion on the question of postponement. Councilmember Kitchen, you made the motion. Do you want to speak to it first?
Well, we had a lot of discussion on Tuesday, so in the interest of time, I won't go into great detail. I do want to thank my colleagues as well as the community for the commitment to affordable housing, the commitment to recognizing that our corridors are the place for additional height and affordable housing, and to recognize the importance of this item and the time to get it right, and to the time expeditiously, I should say. We want to move as quickly as we can to get it right, and to have that conversation with all the various people in our community who are part of this. So I just want to say that at this point.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
I just wanted to clarify for the discussion that would be for the public on the 19th, because we will have a full dais again on the 19th, and we don't know what's going to be pushed there, and we'll have ASMP. We are going to evaluate to make sure that we don't need to separate that hearing from the council meeting, so that we can really listen to what people are saying. But at this point, we don't have a good sense of what is on that agenda. So that would be a separate meeting if the 19th meeting becomes such that we don't think we can really spend the time we need to hear the community at that particular meeting. And we can do other things as well. It was just, we wanted to make sure that when we postponed it, we set at least one time. But I know we have ASMP, and we keep postponing things to the 19th. So I'm not sure what's on that at that point. Thank you.
Councilmember Vella.
Just a clarification. So the item 33 will be on the work session for the 17th, but not on the agenda for the 19th?
Could be on the agenda for the 19th, but if it was, it would be for discussion only, not for action, so as to give the public a chance to be able to speak to us about ideas that have surfaced of the conversation we had on the 17th.
And in order to facilitate the discussion, and I mentioned this to Councilmember Kitchen, is there a way that we could pre-file proposed amendments so that, we're not writing the ordinance on the dais, and we, the public understands where we're going, and we get to look at each other's work, and so there's some transparency and to facilitate the conversation as well. Again, I'm not sure what council is their practice on a large item like this that has kind of different provisions. And also, I spoke to Ann Morgan the other day, and I want legal to also have time to vet and to give us guidance as to where we're going, what changes we need to be making.
So we have, on instances, encouraged people to do that, and in the budget cycle, in several years, we've said we'll consider first those amendments that have been pre-filed that people can see. We have yet to rule out anyone's amendment that was not pre-filed, but not to have the same priority. As I look at the schedule that we have shaping up, I think it's a really good idea. I think we should be trying to surface as early as we can. So everyone, in essence, as I understand the process we're all working on, is going to go do work now. We'll come back together as a group on the 17th. That doesn't mean people have to wait until the 17th to let people know what they're coming back with. So to the degree that people can start posting stuff on the message board the week before that, it would be great for people to be able to see, for legal to be able to speak to, so that when we were together on Tuesday the 17th to discuss this, what we're discussing are things that people have already seen. So I join with you in urging that. Certainly the council could take more formal action. It's within our powers to do that. But we're not going to take any action on either 17th or the 19th, which would then have like another 2-week period of time. We might want to consider, if we're actually going to be taking action on the 9th, maybe one of the things we could talk about on the 17th is how we best approach the actual day of the 9th itself. But certainly for discussion, the earlier we post makes sense to me too. Thank you for bringing
I appreciate that, Mayor.
forward.
Thank you.
Councilmember Renteria?
Thank you, Mayor. And I see the crisis that we have in here on our housing needs, like I see climate change. You know, if we don't do anything on climate change, we're going to have a lot of disastrous storms and severe, changes in our climate. And it's the same thing as housing. If we just keep on discussing this over and over, we've been working on this issue for over 80 years, going on 8 years since I've been on the council, and we still haven't been able to solve this problem. And we're seeing now that our average cost of a house is $1 million. It's getting to $1 million. You know, it's just $600,000 to $700,000. It's not affordable. And we're having apartments that the average apartment is $1,900. I mean, I have staff members that can't afford to have 1-bedroom apartment here in Austin. They're teaming up and getting a 2-bedroom apartment just so they can afford to live here close to downtown. And if we don't do something very soon, we're going to have that situation where only millionaires are going to be able to live here in this town.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I just wanted we received some clarification requests from staff, and I think for the first one of those, I think what the mayor laid out with respect to the 19th or a special hearing if the 19th is too full addresses the first question. The third observation had to do with notification impacts. So to the extent that we have to notify by newspaper 4 weeks out, that would mean that likely on June 9th, we would only be able to take up items that had to do with VMU and the chapter that I think it's 4.3. And if anything surfaces from our conversations that goes beyond that, we will have to go through the notification process, which depending on the timing and how quickly anything could go together, may take us beyond that for items that go beyond VMU. That's just the interpretation that I'm heard from that, but I did want to clarify that for the public. And then in terms, there's another question about, what was expected in terms of staffing from staff to support this. And I think that's going to vary from council member to council member as they go through, and that, maybe we just ask, council members to be judicious in what you're asking, and that understanding that time-intensive things like fully mapping out things by the 17th may not happen easily, depending on how difficult they are for staff to do, but that we will try to meet everyone's needs, and then if it becomes burdensome, then that will be raised to us, and we will try to address how to handle too many requests. Since I don't know what people are going to ask, my suggestion would be that if it becomes a problem, then staff raises it with us, and then we can try to address it at that point in time if it becomes too much. I'm not anticipating it will be too much, but I understand that staff had a concern about that.
Let's go ahead and put this item on the work session for May 3rd. So if staff is feeling those kinds of issues, they can raise them with us, or if anybody wants to daylight something that they think should already be in the hopper, they have the opportunity to do that as well. Thank you for making that clarification. I understand from staff that it may be that the ADU response has already gone through the initiation process. So I leave that up to staff. If that's coming back to us, then that would obviously be something that you would have noticed if you were planning on bringing it back then. My understanding is that the residential and commercial is not going to be ready to go through the process at that point, so you don't need to notice for that. That might be the subject of an IFC on that day to append to that work whatever agreements we've made on like the MU2, but that doesn't require notice. So I think it's really just noticing on the VMU2 and potentially the ADU who have gone through that process. Councilmember Harper Madison, then Councilmember Fuentes, then Councilmember Kitchen.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you recognizing me. To Councilmember Renteria's point, I wonder if it's possible for us to, because I also agree, we've been talking a lot, and I think it's time to take some action. So I wonder if it's possible for us to put a time certain on when we're going to vote, because it still feels ambiguous.
I will be voting on the 9th.
Definitely voting on the 9th. Thank you.
Councilmember Fuentes.
Thank you. You know, I do think it's important to have staff support in regarding the ways we engage our communities. So to the extent that it's possible, I'd like to request, you know, for us to have, our Housing and Planning Department to consider creating either materials or social media graphics or blurbs for us to send in our newsletter about VMUs, what the designation entails, how it currently stands, to help us facilitate those engagements with our communities. Thank you. And I see Director Truelove is nodding. So thank you, Director Truelove. And then Councilmember Kitchen and I are going to be working collaboratively to host a community meeting for our South Austin communities, and we'll be sure to share more details as we finalize the date and time. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Kitchen.
Yes, I just wanted to echo what others have said. I think that there's a number of different ways we're going to reach out to our communities. I look forward to the effort that Councilmember Fuentes and I are collaborating on. I understand also that Councilmember Kelly has plans to do a town hall in her area, and then we'll have various many other ways in which we're communicating with the public. So just for clarity's sake, my motion was to put this on the June 9th agenda for action. So thank you for that question, Councilmember Harper Madison, for action on June 9th. That and what we've also talked about is discussion on May 17th and potentially May 19th, with the understanding, as the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, is that we need specific time to hear from the public. So if May 19th is not going to work for that, we may have to do a special call or something else to make sure that we have set up a situation where we can actually hear from folks that's not 1 minute each, that's longer, so that they can actually speak to us. But we can figure that out as we proceed. So.
And that's my understanding as well.
Okay.
Potentially, and I've also asked for it to be put on the work session for whatever that day is, the 3rd. So it'll be another stopping off point. That's
Okay.
just for us to be able to daylight stuff. And then in terms of breadth of this, I think the conversation we had yesterday from a staff standpoint that we're focused this effort on corridors. And that might serve as kind of a narrowing down and to focus everybody's attention. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I wanted to just emphasize that point is that, for me, this is not simply a conversation about VMU. It's a question about what you do on the corridors, but like actually on the corridors, not 5 blocks in, not 2 blocks in, but on the corridors to add density that's tied to affordability. This is a conversation that the mayor and I have been having for several months. And I think this is an opportunity for us to engage at this as a fuller council to have a more expanded conversation. And although we've been talking for a really long time, I think one of the things that I've realized as I've tried to think about a way forward so that everyone can be engaged on the VMU changes that are being proposed is that we have not talked about, really strictly what we would be comfortable with on the corridor. And I think that we have gotten distracted by attempts to go further in from the corridors, and that has made it hard for us to really elevate the conversation on the corridors. And so that is why, VMU can be voted on June 9th, but nothing else can really be voted on until it's noticed and we go through sort of a longer process. And we may not get to any sort of resolution. We're still waiting for the residential and commercial, but a lot of the residential and commercial would be potentially helpful on the corridors. And we wouldn't want to have programs that were wildly different in some of our expectations, although they may, since we're starting from different zoning places, they would need to be different programs. So I just wanted to clarify that that's how that I'm thinking about this, and I think that the work that Councilmember Kitchen did, and I was part of the group on the VMU too, models one way that you can do that, but we need to have that broader conversation. But it is a different conversation than the one that we've had, and I think it's a place where there is a lot of consensus and agreement, and I think it will allow us to demonstrate how we can work at that consensus point, because I think we do understand that we need to have more density on the corridors, but that we want to do it in a way that captures the affordability opportunities and is respectful of the community that lives off the corridor as well.
And I agree with that as well. I think this is a conversation we haven't been able to, or haven't had really yet, focused this way. Focused on corridors, mostly on affordability issues and affordability programs potentially that intersect corridors. I don't want to limit it just to affordability programs, because I think there might be some changes we could make, not to the same degree that we do associate with affordability, so we still provide the incentive that had agreement, as I recall, from the working group and Mr. Duncan's work and others that might relate to those other situations. So I allow for that to be presented as well when we're together on the 17th.
Mayor,
Councilmember,
can I ask you to clarify what you just said? I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're saying.
I think that
Affordable housing programs within, are we still talking about corridors? Are you talking about?
only corridors. Only corridors. That's the filter I think we've agreed to do. We're only talking about things that focus on corridors. What I said was not necessarily just affordability on corridors, because we have some compatibility standards right now that I think, for example, I'll give you an example. The compatibility standards we have right now, I think, limit height on corridors to 30 feet, from like 25 feet to 50 feet, and 40 feet from 50 feet to the 75 feet. I'm not exactly sure. But I know that I believe there was some consensus to consider going from 30 to 35 or 40 to 45 in those. I don't know. But that's not necessarily tied to affordability, but something I want to take a look at while we're focused on corridors.
So just to summarize what I think I hear you saying, you are raising for consideration, I'm going to say affordable housing, because affordability is just so overly general at this point, the affordable housing provisions within that, as well as compatibility requirements. Am I
Yes,
understanding
it
you
could be
correctly?
compatibility, it could be parking. I mean, those were the things that I think were generated. But the focus is on just impacts or changes in use on properties that are on the corridor. Councilmember Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor. I do think it's important that we are having this conversation. I know there's a lot of folks out there that want to see it move much quicker, and I appreciate that. I do think it's important to have the conversations with community members, just so there's a set expectation of how this is going to work and how it might affect their community. But I want to remind people that in about 10 years, we're going to have a much more robust network of light rail, Metro Rapid buses, bike lanes, and we need to make sure that we are setting ourselves up for success over the next 10 years. Otherwise, I would hate to imagine what we're going to see in the skyrocketing cost of housing and housing availability all over the city. I know we talked about it in pretty good depth on Tuesday, but we definitely feel the urgency of trying to tackle, housing and affordability issues. But I just want to keep our mind also on the long term that the decisions we make now could take years to be, fully realized as people make their way through the permitting process and really get through building the housing that we desperately need. So it's definitely on our mind that we need to make good decisions and we need to make them in a timely fashion.
Thank you. Anything else before we try to run through the rest of the agenda? Councilmember Kitchen.
The vote to do on 33. Just one very quick thing. We have a lot to talk about on the substance. Our vote in front of us right now is the postponement to June 9th. I appreciate what everyone said. Look forward to the conversations. We'll need some clarity around that because there's a lot that we need to do, and I want to do all those things, but I don't want to hold up the changes to the V program. I want to get those things resolved as we also tee up the other things we want to talk about. So
I'll join you on that.
Okay.
Let's take a vote. Those in favor of the motion to postpone, please raise your hand. Those opposed, unanimous on the dais. Councilmember Poole off. Let's call up the things that we think we can do without any questions right now. I don't know how quick your questions are. Really fast? Yes. All right, Councilmember Tovo, let's call up item number 5.
So I'm going to start by moving approval of this item.
Is there a second to approving item number 5? I need a second. Councilmember Kitchen seconds. Councilmember Tovo.
So this is the item that adjusts our service contract with the Downtown Austin Alliance to allow for them to continue doing what they have been doing, which is to provide the maintenance for our public restrooms downtown. It also is kind of a pass-through for the security at Brush Square, at the Brush Square museums. We have had a history of different kinds of funding, as I understand it, for our public restroom maintenance, including early on, the Downtown Austin Alliance was through their PID, as I understand it, paying for the maintenance of our temporary restrooms. So it's taken a while, and I haven't really gotten to the bottom of why and how the funding has shifted throughout this. But I am just raising for my colleagues notice that I don't understand why, when we have previously paid for the maintenance of the Brush Square, either the Brush Square security and one of the restrooms, or both, we have paid for that typically out of, or at least in part of this period of time, through the convention center budget. I believe we've also used the hotel occupancy taxes to pay for the security at the Brush Square Museum, since those are historic assets and they are primarily serving visitors. So I'm not sure. I guess my question to staff is, from what source of funding is this coming? I understand it's not, I believe I understand it's not coming from either one of those sources anymore.
Thank you, Councilmember. We do have staff from our Economic Development Department who will be able to answer that. They are virtual, and so if you could move over, Director Holt-Rabb.
And I understand part of it is a legal response that we obviously can't have here. But if you could just answer the question of what source of funding are we using for the Brush Square security and for the public restroom maintenance, please. And then my next question is going to be for Director McNeely. Thank you for being here too. And that is, from time to time, I've heard from board members of the Brush Square Museums and others that they really require 24/7 security, and they would like to see 24/7 security. It's my understanding that this security is just what we've been providing, which is not 24/7 security. And so my question is whether we know what their needs are in terms of security.
There we go. While we wait for EDD, Kimberly McNeely serving as the Director for Parks and Recreation. I can, for you, Council, I can definitely pull our safety or our incident reports to be able to provide you very specific information, but anecdotally, I can tell you that because of the location of that particular, because of the location of that particular space, that there are some poor choices that are made by individuals, inclusive of choosing public urination, public defecation, other behaviors that could are not desirable or, could be looked as unfavorable. The security that we have in the evening for the 7 days of week has absolutely been necessary and appropriate, and has also helped deter some of those behaviors from happening. There's a little time frame sometimes when people make choices when the lights are still on, when the sun is still out, that could certainly benefit from additional funding. However, I wouldn't have that information. All I have is it anecdotally. I didn't pull the actual incidents, but certainly I could provide that for better analysis.
Thanks very much. And I've met, this falls within my district. I've met multiple times about the issue, and Oh, I've broken my microphone again. My apologies. I also don't have recent incident reports. I have incident reports from a few years ago, but my assumption is that this probably is a need for additional security still. And so manager, I think I'm not sure if EDD is on, and we need to move on anyway, but let me say, from what I understand about how we're funding this item, I have concerns about how we're funding it. I think it should be shifted back to the funding sources it originally was. I'm not sure what the mechanism is for doing that after we pass it here today, which I'm prepared to do. And I also want to make sure that we're following up with Rush Square Museums about their need for additional security. And again, I think the funding source that we had initially identified is an appropriate one. So what I assume that would need to be done through a budget amendment on a subsequent agenda. Is that the mechanism? If we're able to shift the funding source, since one's not identified in the backup, I'm not sure whether or not we would need to do that, or if that's something that you can do on your own, and we can just have a conversation about it at work session. I don't know what the mechanism is. When there's not a funding source specified in the backup, we're not necessarily approving that funding source.
Since it looks like we're not able to get our staff online, I will certainly follow up with you and determine what those next steps could be regarding the funding source.
That's fine. And if we can get it straightened out, I'm happy to bring back a IFC or to encourage you all to bring it forward for consideration. Okay, thank you all.
Let's go ahead and take a vote then. Those in favor of item 5, please raise your hand. Those opposed, unanimous on the dais. Councilmember Poole off. Let's see if we can go through these other issues.